You can share it to your own personal Facebook.
To my phone.
Yeah, look at Facebook on your phone. See if you can see the live stream. So it's doing like a countdown right now.
So do I share it onto my click share, or you want me
Yeah,
to
you
share it on my phone?
just share it to your personal page. Wait, it's not public.
Yeah, I have to log in to share it.
Yeah, so right now we are live.
Okay.
But yeah, so welcome to our live stream here. Got Johnny Vang here, local realtor and loan officer in the Milwaukee area with the Move Smart community. And my business partner, Johnny Vang. Johnny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Johnny Vang. I'm with, like Laura said, one of his partners over at EXP. We're coming here to do a introduction, or maybe not an introduction, just kind of explain how the market's going to be, both here in the Twin Cities, where I'm at in Minnesota, and along with where Laura's at. And I've been in the business for quite a while now, decade in real estate, a couple of decades in mortgage. So I do both, mortgage real estate agent, or real estate agent plus mortgage loan originator.
Yeah, so just like Johnny said, right now we're kind of in a unique time of the market, right? So we're at the end of summer here. Market's beginning to shift a little bit. So we've been getting a lot of questions that we've been seeing from our friends on social media, things like that. Is now still the right time to buy a house, right? Are rates going to finally come down? Those have been some of the questions going on. So we figured, you know what? Let's go ahead and just start talking about this. What are we seeing? So myself personally, in my market in Milwaukee here, it's still really competitive. Unlike a lot of the national headlines, the media, right? They're saying that right now, a lot of prices are coming down, right? And there's lots of seller concessions, things like that. But that's completely opposite from what I'm actually seeing here in the greater Milwaukee area market. If your home's still really nice and it's in a good location and it's priced right, that's the most important thing, priced right. They are actually getting still multiple offers and still going in that first weekend. There are still people waiving inspections as well. It's still a very competitive market here in the Milwaukee area. Now, if you are targeting some other homes that maybe they've been sitting for a while, or really what happened was the sellers overpriced it to begin with, right? So those are the type of listings that you can go after as a buyer and potentially negotiate seller concession, discounts, things like that. So that's what I've been seeing in the greater Milwaukee area. What have you been seeing, Johnny?
Yeah, so the July reports just came out, right? So we're currently in August today. It's currently August 21st. The July reports just came out here in the Twin Cities. I just took a look at the Hennepin County, which is where I'm located, and prices are still going up here in the Twin Cities. In addition to that, you're still seeing, like, I think sellers are a little bit, because we're moving towards the winter market here, and so you're kind of seeing where they're allowing for seller pay closing costs, but I mean, you're still receiving multiple offers on homes that are priced correctly, just like what you were saying, Laura. I know in the Minnesota market in general, you're looking at a median purchase price of 365 in the 365,000. In the Hennepin County area, it's actually 409, right? So it's 409,000. So it's a little bit higher, but the overall Minnesota market is at 365. We're also looking at 38 days on average in Minnesota. However, in Hennepin County, where I'm at, it's actually 33 days for closing. So you're still looking at a really, really competitive market. And I think that, you know, we only have like maybe 2 to 3 months of supply of housing that's out there right now. I guess my thought is that if you plan on selling a house, you should reach out to us so that we can get your house listed. But if you're looking to buy, get ready to make those offers. You may be competing, and the likelihood is that you probably will be competing with at least one or two other people. So if that's not happening as often anymore, if you're looking at properties that have age on the market, meaning like it's, I don't know, maybe 45 days plus on the market, you're seeing prices come down. But outside of that, we're not seeing, I mean, we're not seeing what the rest of the United States is seeing, like what Florida is seeing or California is seeing. So, and of course, I think, I have opinions on why those things are changing the way that they are. But here in the Twin Cities, we're still a hot market.
Awesome. So thanks for the update. I didn't mention the seller's market, but yeah, kind of like you, right? Winter, fall's coming up, right? If you're still trying to sell your house, it's better to do it sooner than later. You never, it is that seasonal slowdown usually, right? In the fall and winter, right?
Yeah.
When the kids go back to school, nobody's really looking to move. So it's interesting. I've been seeing a lot of sellers list right now, and then they'll be like, oh, but I want to stay here for another 2 months. So it's quite a strategy, right? So that they have time to move out, but they want to capitalize right now in the market, right? So that they can potentially sell their house, stay in it, and then slowly move out, right? So I've been seeing a little bit of that. So let's talk about how do you buy a house, right? So there's a lot of people who are thinking about it. They may not know how to get started. Um, you and I were both realtors. We're both loan officers as well. Um, but how does somebody go about getting started on figuring out if they can even buy a house, Johnny? Like, what would you tell them to look at?
Yeah, the first thing I do is I usually talk to my clients about how, um, why they plan on moving, where do they want to move, how many bedrooms did they need, how many bathrooms, and all that stuff, just to get a starter on what's going on with their personal life. And then once I know exactly what's going on with that, then we take them down the pre-approval process, right? So we take them to the mortgage company, which for me would be myself, right? I bring them over to the mortgage brokerage side of my business, and we would look at their portfolio, look at their what we call the 5 C's: your credit, your capacity, your uh, let's see, credit capacity, collateral, your I can't remember the other two right off the top of my head, but basically income, asset, um, credit, the property, and the overall characteristics of the whole entire transaction to see what they qualify for. Once we determine what they qualify for, now they have to determine what they're comfortable with, right? So what kind of monthly payment they're going to be comfortable with as they transition into a new home. Because if they're new home buyers, they may not have experience with having to fix your own home, right? While you're living into it, usually you call the landlord if you're renting a home, and they come out, they fix things. But when you own the home, um, you're going to have additional expenses like trash. The electricity is going to be different, right? Of course, these things, heating bills are going to be a little bit more expensive. But once you determine what you can afford, then we go back and we look at, okay, what's on the market based on what they're looking at, and what locations can they buy in, and then we readjust from that point on. So that's kind of how we start out. Depending on, we also, in the mortgage process, we also look to see if they can qualify for any kind of down payment assistance or any grants or anything like that to really help them out if they're first time home buyers. If they're not, if they're moving up and they're upgrading, the likelihood is that there aren't any support for people who are upgrading. There may be a down payment assistance, but it's not much better than just coming in with the 5% down and then getting probably a better rate than one with a down payment assistance.
All right. So thanks for that quick walkthrough. Let's talk about one of the biggest myths, right? A lot of people seem to think that you need 20% down to buy a home. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. First time home buyers, 3% is kind of pretty typical for first time home buyers. And if you're not a first time home buyer, 5% is kind of what you're going to be looking at. Of course, with that, anything above 80% loan to value, or less than a 20% down payment, you're going to be looking at mortgage insurance, and that might be a little bit, but if you get a conventional loan, it eventually drops off. If you get an FHA loan, then the likelihood is we're going to probably want to refinance you after a certain period of time where we think the value is over 80% loan to value.
All right. So what about credit scores, right? So a lot of people have no idea what their own personal credit score is. Can you kind of really roughly just talk about what's the minimum credit score needed to buy a house?
So, I mean, depending on your specific situation, the bare minimum that we do here at Win-Win Financial is 580, right? 580 is the bottom line, but you had to affix your credit somewhat to get to that 580 mark, and you can't have had any lates in the last 2 years. What we would prefer to see is 620 or above. Now, best case scenario would be, like 750 plus. If you got 750 plus, you're probably going to get better credit. Your credit's going to be better. Your chances of getting the loan is going to be better because the likelihood is you've made all your payments on time. We see the history that you have. And in addition to seeing the history, having that better credit score could also get you a better interest rate. So you might be able to qualify for a little bit more with a lower interest rate.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, FHA versus conventional. I mean, you said, rates are a little bit better if you have a better credit score, which you can get conventional. But can you compare real quick? What are the rates if you're getting an FHA versus a conventional?
So right now they're actually pretty drastically different. FHA is actually cheaper when it comes to interest rate. However, there's an upfront MIP fee, right? Mortgage insurance premium that has to be paid to be able to allow the FHA program to continue, right? And so when you pay for that specific fee, you're allowing the insurance to be covered for the 3.5% down that you're putting on FHA homes. And so when you pay that fee, you may get a lower interest rate, but you don't get that money back unless you're refinancing into another FHA. They might be able to give you a little bit of the credit back if you refinance within the first maybe 2 years or something like that. Um, so you're looking at, I think last time I checked, the interest rates for conventional was about 6.5 to about 7%, and then you're looking at probably 6% to 6.5 for FHA. So there is a pretty big difference there. However, the monthly payment kind of comes out to be the same because usually that upfront MIP is not paid in cash, it's paid through financing. And so sometimes your monthly payment is going to be higher even though your interest rate is lower.
Got it. Okay. So thanks for that information. Let's talk about rates. So you mentioned rates a lot. Rates is a big deal right now, right? For all buyers, right? Everybody's always asking, "Hey, do you think the rates are going to come down?" Right? Um, what do you see? They right now the main headline that I've been seeing a lot of people have been asking me, "Hey, the Fed's going to meet soon. There's some talk about the Fed funding rate going to be cut. Do you think that's going to make mortgage rates go down?" Right? Even real estate professionals, real estate agents, even loan officers, right? They're talking about, "Hey, guys, rates are going to come down because the federal fund rate is going to get cut soon, right? Or that's the anticipated action that's going to happen." What do you think? I see you smiling there.
So I mean, look, I was on the news earlier today, and they mentioned, of course, they mentioned the Fed's going to be meeting in September, right? I believe September 16th and 17th, the Fed's going to meet, and they're going to have a decision that they're going to have to make whether they're going to lower interest rate or not interest rate, but the Fed fund rate. And so I believe it's like 60-40 right now, where the market, right, the people in the stock market, the people in the industries that are selling, all the goods and such, they're expecting rates to go down. But currently, or most recently, the CPI index shows that um, inflation has increased, right? From, I think it was like 2.7% to 2.8%. And they're assuming that with the tariffs that are coming, there's going to be additional increase in inflation and therefore the Feds won't be changing the interest rate. However, I mean, it's all up in the air. I don't know what kind of decisions they're going to make. We hope that they drop interest rate, but what we do anticipate is next year that there will be at least two rate drops. And so, if you can wait that long, but the thing is that, when the spring market hits for us, I know definitely here, especially in the Twin Cities, when the spring market hits, expect the prices to go up at least 20, 30,000. And so, do you really want to wait for the price to increase with a quarter point lower, rate? I don't think it's a wash, right? Plus, when the rates go down, you're gonna have more people in the market, and then now you're looking at uh, you know multiple bid situations where people could be offering up, like $20,000 above asking price. I mean, we saw it during the COVID days. It was like 2021. Don't quote me on this, but we saw prices go up, or where people were making offers $100,000 over asking price, which is like crazy, right? But they were doing it because that was the only way they can get into the house. Um, so you don't want to get into that kind of situation. I think, my thoughts and opinions on when to buy a house. I'd say, today is always the best day to buy the house, especially if you need it, if your family is growing, if you are changing jobs and you're moving to a different city, a different state. You have to make the call to go ahead and move forward on it. The likelihood of us seeing something like 2008, 2009, where the prices crashed, is not very likely. So there's too much regulation from the mortgage perspective protecting those things. I don't see it happening. Maybe in other industries, but not in the primary home purchase industry.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that as well. You know, people always ask us like, "Hey, is now the best time to buy?" Right? And is our rates coming down? As if we have some kind of crystal ball. Quite honestly, we do not. But like you said, the best answer is if you can afford to buy today, then it's a good time to buy, right? You want to get in today before, because tomorrow the price is going to go up, right? Whether that tomorrow is a year, 2 years from now. Historically, home prices are going up, and very important that you said, even if the rates do drop below 6%, right? There was a national headline that says, "Hey, if that happens, there's 5 million other buyers waiting to jump back in the market," right? So if you can buy today, you better try your hardest to buy today because you do not want to get in a bidding war with those people when they come into the market, right?
Right.
It's going to end up being a wash, right? Potentially. And so, also in regards to interest rates, from what I've heard, that usually with mortgage rates, um, I've been seeing the mortgage rates are actually trending down lately in the past couple weeks. You've been seeing the same, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. In the last 2 weeks, we saw rates start to move an inch downwards, not significantly, but enough to make a difference.
right, right. So in the mortgage world, the rates, right? A lot of these rates are already being adjusted, right? In anticipation of what the Fed is doing. So the normal people, right? They're kind of like they wait for the Fed to do something and then they wait for the result, right? But really, in the mortgage rates, they're already being built in, right? So they're already anticipating whether the Fed funding rate's going to go up or down. The rates are already, they're already being changed, right? So whatever happens is not going to really be a big impact. So, um, now let's talk about something else. So, obviously there's already homeowners, right? And we've been talking about rates going down. Is now a good time to refinance?
I think anytime your rate goes below 1%, or the interest rate is below 1% of your current rate, you should refinance. Um, but it depends on your loan size, right? If you have $1 million loan and you can save like a good $500 a month to $1,000 a month, you should probably refinance. It's going to do you some good. If you're only saving like maybe $100 a month, I think you probably should hold off. Even if it takes 3 years, $100 a month might not cover the closing costs that's going to take to be able to do the refinance. unless your lender is able to give you some kind of a credit to pay for that, right? Then you should refinance right away. Um, some lenders are able to do that. We do that sometimes depending on the situation. Sometimes you're able to do it, and sometimes you're not. And sometimes it's beneficial, and sometimes it's not. So um, when we can, we do it. And I think that if your interest rate is above 7%, you should probably take a look into it. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, so definitely. Like Johnny mentioned earlier, the rates are kind of around like the 6.25, 6.3, potentially, right? So it depends on your finances and your profile, things like that. So if you bought last year, 1% higher than that, 7.3, right? Plus, it's a good time to contact your loan officer or either one of us. We can help you with that. We can take a look at your profile and see what you can qualify for. So something that a lot of realtors, loan officers hate this when realtors say this, right? What's the saying? You marry the house, you date the rate, right? But then realtors never explain that, hey, you actually have to qualify to do a refi, right? So what does that process look like, Johnny?
Yeah, so when you come back and you want to do a refinance, if you're doing a conventional loan, the likelihood is that you're going to have to requalify for the loan, which means that you're going to have to submit income documents. You're going to have to submit your credit has to be good. So if you just bought the house and you just went out and furnished the whole entire house and you just added another $20,000 of debt on your credit and you were maxed out when we financed you in the first place, the likelihood is you're going to have a hard time qualifying for that refinance. Um, However, if you didn't change anything too much and you live frugally or so, you're going to be able to do the refinance. But you got to talk to your loan officer, find out exactly where you're at. Um, if you meet a loan officer like myself or Laura, we're going to coach you through the process, right? We're going to say, okay, so you might have to pay this debt off before we can get you qualified for the refinance, or maybe we have to do a cash out refinance because you have enough equity now to be able to take on some of those debts so that you can actually refinance, lower your monthly payment, not just on your house, but also on any other debt that you might have out there, say credit card debt with interest rates above 25%, right? That's something that might be helpful. So we have to look at your personal scenario. You do have to qualify. If you're doing a VA or FHA streamline, the likelihood is that you'll be just fine. Um, you probably won't need to re-qualify or anything. They may check your credit, but beyond that, you won't need to provide income documentation or additional asset documentation. You should be uh, those programs are pretty easy to go through. So if you do have a VA loan or FHA loan currently, you should probably reach out to your loan officer or either one of us to be able to help you out.
All right. So now, if you have a conventional loan and you did a minimum 3% down payment and you bought last year, what are the chances that you can actually refi?
If you can bring in the cash to pay for your closing costs, you could probably do the refinance as a rate term refinance. If you're lucky, you have to stay. If your appraisal comes in just a little bit less than it did when you purchased it, because every appraiser is gonna look at the value of the home differently, especially on refinances. They look at it very different from a purchase standpoint. The purchase actually, when appraisers are looking at purchases, they're looking at the offer as something that dictates the value, right? So the value is somewhat what people are offering. So sometimes that's why you see appraisals come in exactly where the purchase price is, because they're taking the offer in consideration. When you do a refinance, that is not the case. And so they just take a look at the environment, and then there's no offers that is going to support it. So they go ahead and just give you whatever they believe the value is. And so sometimes it might be like $1,000 less, and that might just break you from being able to do a refinance. So it's a lot tougher. Let's just say it like that. It's sometimes still possible, but much tougher when you don't have a large down payment.
Yeah, so that's definitely good to know. Appraisals, that's definitely something we cannot control as part of the lenders, right? It's a third party valuation, and something very important Johnny mentioned, right, is that when you're doing a purchase, there is the purchase price. So they have a target. The appraiser person has a target that they can justify the purchase price to. Um, when it becomes an appraisal for a refi or even a HELOC, now it just becomes a kind of like how much do they think this house is worth currently, right? So a lot more difficult process and a different topic, but I guess to to argue against an appraiser, it's not the best. You don't have the best chances, right? I've I've been 1 out of 5 with appraisers, so yeah, something like that. But yeah, so there you have it. If you are a little bit confused, you don't understand what a refinance means, it means you're essentially replacing your existing mortgage with a new one. So if you have a 3%, 4%, 2% rate, 5%, whatever, you have to think long and hard. Do you want to replace that rate, right, with the new one, right? So that would be today's current rate. And it all depends. What do you need to do the refi for, right? I had a phone call earlier this week. Somebody was like, "Hey, I want to do a refi." I was like, "Well, what's your current rate?" And he was like, "Well, 4%." And I'm like, "Well, why are you trying to mess with that?" And then he told me, "Well, I need to consolidate debt." I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." All right. So, looking at the equity amount and what his home's currently worth, what his current mortgage is, we could totally do that for you. But there is, another solution, right, Johnny, that you can do instead of replacing your current mortgage. What options would you suggest?
So I mean, you do have home equity loans, right? Home equity lines of credit. Um, there's, I mean, there's so many, but from a mortgage perspective, from being a mortgage broker, I think those two are probably your um, most comfortably used products, right? Instead of doing a full refinance. Now, it it's going to be like Laura said, if you're going to do some consolidating, right? The interest rates on the home equity loans and the home equity line of credits are going to be a little bit higher than a traditional first mortgage on a primary home, right? Interest rate. And so you have to look at the benefits and disadvantages of all of it. If you want a line of credit, meaning if you want something that you can use again later on, let's say for example you tend to travel a lot, right, and you tend to have these big credit card bills, and you like to pay them off so that you can pay them off with a lesser interest rate, then now you have a line of credit from the home equity line of credit to be able to reuse if needed. Or if you're an investor, right? So what's really cool about myself and Lore. Now, just to remind you guys, I'm licensed for home equity loans and first mortgages in Minnesota and in Florida, right? And Lore, I believe you're in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, California.
Okay, so those are the states that we operate in, right? And so for home equity loans, we can actually do investment properties up to, I believe it was 75% loan to value, right? So you have a ton of equity in your investment property. We can do that. We can go ahead and take the liquidity out. Now, as an investor myself, right, we tend to be heavier on debt and then have these larger assets that we use these debts to purchase. And so if you're an investor, it might be a great idea to be able to get a home equity loan, invest. Say, for example, you do short-term rentals and you get big chunks of money at a time, you pay it off, then you can go back and reuse that line of credit again, right? So it's beneficial to individuals based on their circumstance. I think home equity loans and lines of credits are great ways to utilize the equity to be able to earn more if that's what you're trying to do. However, I think if you're just paying off credit cards, it's helpful for the time being, but don't get yourself in a position where you're continuing to increase your debt load. Like in the past, I've met some clients where They use the home equity loan to pay off their credit cards, and they go back and they rack right up their credit cards, and now they don't have the equity, and it puts them in a really, really difficult situation. Don't recommend it if you don't have the constraints to not use your credit card after you reallocated the funds. I recommend that you go ahead and like figure out your budget before you come and try to do a home equity loan, line of credit, or cash out refinance. But it could help you in the short term, right? So if I can help anyone, I definitely will, right?
Yeah, so definitely some good points there. You want to use your credit responsibly, right? Don't just over leverage to go have fun or buy a new car or go on a fancy trip, right? But those are your decisions. We can't control what you do, but definitely. So that's pretty much all I had to talk about for today. Anything else you want to add before we head out?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. In my community, I just want to make a quick statement. In my community, we have clients that right after they buy their house, they will go buy a brand new Tundra, right? Like $78,000 vehicle. Um, and when they were buying the house, they were really, really close to their ratios, right? Or to the max ratios that they would allow. If you do that, you can't refinance, guys. So um, my thoughts are if you're buying anytime between within the last couple of years and into the next, like, yeah, I would say 6 months, prepare for a refinance. Don't go out there and spend too much. And when you can refinance, I'd recommend you reach back out to your loan officers and make that happen, assuming you're going to save at least 200-300 bucks a month or more.
All right. So thanks for those last minute tips. If you are watching this later after we're not live anymore, feel free to drop your questions in the comments below. Next time we go live, we can address those questions or maybe we'll respond later in the comments. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right. Later.